The ceasefire was announced, markets surged, oil dropped 16% in a single day. World leaders called it a breakthrough. Then the ships tried to move. 5 ships crossed on the first day. Not 500, not 50, 5. Meanwhile, over 600 vessels, including 325 tankers, sat stranded inside the Gulf according to Lloyd's List intelligence. More than 20,000 seafarers locked on their ships for over a month, unable to leave. And Iran, the country that agreed to reopen the strait, published a map showing a circle marked in Farsi, danger zone, right over the main shipping lane. The ceasefire did not reopen Hormuz. It handed Iran a new kind of control over it. This video is the full verified picture of what is actually happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now. The ships that cannot move, the mines that may still be there, the $1 million toll that Iran is charging per crossing, and what it all means for the global economy and the next phase of negotiations. To understand how extraordinary the current situation is, you need a precise baseline. Before the war began on February 28, 2026, the Strait of Hormuz operated as the world's single most important energy corridor. Roughly 20% of the world's oil and natural gas normally pass through the strait, primarily from producers including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and the UAE. Wikipedia: more than 100 cargo-carrying vessels moved through the 21-mile-wide waterway daily before the conflict, according to Lloyd's List. CNN: according to Windward Maritime AI's detailed analysis, the strait ran at 80 to 130 ships per day through late February. That flow, steady, uninterrupted, 2 miles of lane in each direction, was the physical foundation of global energy supply. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE all depended on it for the vast majority of their oil and gas exports. Asian economies, including China, Japan, South Korea, and India, received enormous shares of their energy through it. Europe received LNG from Qatar through it. Then February 28 arrived, and within hours, Iran's IRGC broadcast warnings across maritime VHF channels. No ships permitted to pass. The 135 ships per day flow collapsed to zero. By the time the ceasefire was announced on April 8, the Strait of Hormuz had been effectively closed for 42 days. The damage to the global energy system in that time is documented and specific. The restriction of shipments by more than 90%, around 10 million barrels per day of oil production, raised energy and agricultural input costs worldwide. Wikipedia: Dubai crude oil prices reached $166 per barrel on March 19, their highest on record. Brent crude hit $114 per barrel on March 27. Wikipedia: in California, gasoline prices exceeded $5 per gallon in the second week of March, according to Wikipedia's Hormuz crisis entry. But oil prices are only part of the picture. The Persian Gulf accounts for roughly 30 to 35% of global urea exports and 20 to 30% of ammonia exports. Up to 30% of internationally traded fertilizers normally transit the Strait of Hormuz. Wikipedia: when fertilizer supply chains break down, food prices follow. Not immediately, but within months as agricultural input costs cascade through planting cycles. The IMF, World Bank, and World Food Program jointly warned of rising food insecurity as a consequence of the disruption, according to CBS News reporting. In normal times, about 135 ships crossed daily, and more than 800 freighters were stuck inside the Gulf, mostly waiting to leave, according to Bloomberg. Bloomberg: the International Maritime Organization, confirmed that 2,000 seafarers were awaiting evacuation on ships remaining in the Persian Gulf, spending more than 1 month in a tense and volatile situation, unable to leave their ships, according to IMO's Maritime Safety Division Director Damien Chevalier. UN News: 20,000 people trapped on ships for over a month. That number has been almost entirely absent from mainstream coverage of this crisis. When Trump announced the ceasefire on April 8, he said it was conditional on Iran agreeing to, quote, the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the deal required the strait to be opened without limitation, including tolls. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said at a press briefing, the strait is open. CNBC: Iran's foreign minister said something different. He said safe passage would be possible for 2 weeks, and added the phrase, via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations. Those 5 words, technical limitations, are doing enormous work in this sentence. They are not defined. They are not explained. and they have become the gap through which the ceasefire is already leaking. According to Windward Maritime AI's operational analysis, all observed transits through the strait continue to operate under coordination with Iranian authorities. Iranian communications to vessels have reinforced that unauthorized transit remains subject to direct threat, with warnings indicating that vessels attempting passage without approval may be targeted. Windward Iran set up its own shipping channel north of Larak Island rather than through the main channel south of the island. One ship paid $2 million to use Iran's channel. Wikipedia let that sink in for a moment. One ship paid $2 million to cross a strait that international law says should be free to navigate, and that was before the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire, the toll structure has been formalized further, with reports of approximately $1 million per crossing according to Wikipedia's updated crisis entry. The toll is not just an economic issue. It is a legal and strategic one, and understanding why reveals exactly what Iran is doing here. According to legal scholars cited in Just Security, the UNCLOS regime of innocent passage through territorial waters prohibits imposing a fee on passing ships unless they receive specific services. Both Iran and the United States signed but neither ratified UNCLOS. Wikipedia James Kraska, chair of the Stockton Center for International Law at the U.S. Naval War College, said imposing transit fees is a violation of the rules of transit passage, and that Hormuz is an international strait, carries a right of transit passage for all states, which permits unimpeded surface, subsurface, and overflight. House of Saud Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis called it unacceptable and said it would set a dangerous precedent for freedom of navigation, according to Jerusalem Post reporting. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber, CEO of the UAE's state oil company ADNOC, said on Thursday, "Access is being restricted, conditioned, and controlled. Iran has made clear, through both its statements and actions, that passage is subject to permission, conditions, and political leverage. That is not freedom of navigation, that is coercion." Al Jazeera, but here is the strategic dimension that goes beyond legal arguments. According to Windward's analysis, Iran is signaling its intent to institutionalize its role in governing transit through Hormuz. Proposed measures include mandatory pre-transit coordination and approval, vessel inspection requirements, defined transit corridors, and potential toll systems based on cargo type. Public messaging indicates a potential charge of approximately $1 per barrel for outbound oil shipments. Windward at 20 million barrels per day. The pre-war Hormuz throughput, $1 per barrel, translates to $20 million per day in toll revenue for Iran, $140 million per week, $7, $3 billion per year. This is not a temporary wartime measure. This is the architecture of a permanent revenue stream, using the ceasefire as the moment to formalize what was previously just coercion at gunpoint into something approaching a legitimized toll system. On April 9, one day after the ceasefire, Iran's IRGC published something that should have been the top story on every network. Semi-official Iranian news agencies ISNA and Tasnim published a navigational chart showing a large circle marked danger zone in Farsi over the traffic separation scheme, the standard route that commercial ships have always taken through the strait. The chart was dated from February 28 until April 9. It was unclear if the IRGC had cleared any mining on the route since then. Click Orlando, the IRGC stated that all ships intending to transit the strait must coordinate directly with its units and use an alternative route running along Larak Island, further north, closer to the Iranian mainland, to avoid possible collision with sea mines. The Star, according to the House of Saud analysis citing maritime data, the Larak corridor narrows to approximately 5 nautical miles at its tightest point, roughly 1/4 the width of the main strait's established lanes. House of Saud, think about what this means operationally. The standard 2-mile wide shipping lanes in each direction, already narrow for the world's largest supertankers, have been replaced by a 5 nautical mile corridor. That corridor runs entirely through Iranian-controlled waters. Every ship that uses it is physically inside Iranian territorial control from entry to exit. The Washington Institute assessed that clearing Hormuz of mines would require up to 16 mine countermeasure vessels. The U.S. Navy has 7 total. Emma Salisbury of the Foreign Policy Research Institute told NPR she was honestly completely baffled by the gap. House of Saud, the U.S. Navy retired its last 4 forward-deployed Avenger-class mine countermeasure ships from Bahrain on September 25, 2025, 5 months before the war began, according to the same analysis. The capability gap is real, documented, and significant. Legal scholars Schmidt and McLaughlin, writing in Just Security, argued that mines may not be used in a manner that effectively prevents or suspends transit passage for neutral vessels through international straits like the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Lyric corridor technically satisfies the requirement to provide an alternative route, meaning the legal compliance is formal while the practical effect is total control. House of Saud, the numbers tell the story, but the shipping executives are saying it even more directly. Niels Haupt, communications chief at Hapag-Lloyd, the fifth largest shipping company in the world, said, "Returning to normal for our industry is weeks away." The company is currently refraining from transiting the strait based on its latest risk assessment. Hapag-Lloyd has 6 container ships trapped inside the strait. CNBC San Manders, president of Flexport, a global shipping logistics company, said shipping executives have no information on how to transit the strait during the ceasefire and are not in contact with Iranian authorities. CNN Ron Widows, former head of the World Shipping Council, explained what shippers actually need: explicit approval from the people that may do you harm. How that process works, who exactly is the body that's got the authority to say, yeah, you can or not. CNN, that phrase, explicit approval from the people that may do you harm, is the precise definition of what Iran has constructed. A permission system, a gatekeeping system, backed by mines in the water and IRGC patrol boats in the channel. Joe McMoneagle, president of think tank Global Center for Energy Analysis, who lives in Saudi Arabia, said, "If this continues for another week or two, the consequences not just for energy prices, but for the global economy are dire. This is a very tenuous ceasefire." CNN Lael Akane, global market analyst at eToro, told CNN it could take 6 months to get ship traffic back to where it was before the war began. CNBC 6 months. Even in a best-case scenario, ceasefire holds, talks succeed, mines cleared, Iran withdraws conditions, the shipping industry needs 6 months to normalize. The economic damage does not stop when the guns do. Here is a number that illustrates the scale of disruption better than any other. Lloyd's List, which tracks maritime intelligence data, reported that more than 600 vessels are stuck in the Middle East Gulf region. The near-total stoppage has set back operations to such a degree that even if traffic returned to pre-conflict levels tomorrow, it would still take more than 10 days to move all vessels out of the Gulf, Lloyd's List estimated. NPR, but it is not just the ships trying to get out. According to Hapag-Lloyd's Niels Haupt, the issue is not solved until all the ships have left the Strait of Hormuz because there are hundreds of thousands of containers at ports in India, Oman, and Pakistan which need to be transported into the Persian Gulf. CNBC traffic needs to flow both ways simultaneously. Ships carrying oil and gas need to exit. Ships carrying goods, food, medicine, manufactured products need to enter Gulf ports that have been cut off for 6 weeks. The congestion problem is not linear, it compounds. S&P Global Market Intelligence tracked just 4 transits on Wednesday, the first day of the ceasefire, noting that vessels appear to still be making use of the altered transit route west along Lyric Island. More than 400 oil-laden tankers and dozens of LNG and LPG carriers remained anchored outside the Gulf awaiting signals for passage, according to marine traffic. CNBC: one distinction between the Red Sea Houthi disruption and the Hormuz situation is critical. In the Red Sea, ships could reroute via the Cape of Good Hope. At Hormuz, rerouting options are far more limited and largely confined to pipeline diversions, according to tanker freight analyst Panagiotis Kronteres at Clare. CNBC: there is no Cape of Good Hope for Hormuz. Either the strait opens on terms acceptable to all parties, or the backlog grows and the economic damage compounds daily. Here is the honest picture the verified record supports as of today. The ceasefire was announced 3 days ago. The world celebrated. Markets surged. Oil dropped. Relief appeared to arrive. What actually happened in Hormuz is more complex. The ceasefire has not reopened the Strait of Hormuz. Transit remains restricted, coordinated, and selectively enforced. Standard shipping lanes remain largely unused. No meaningful increase in traffic has followed the ceasefire announcement. This is not a recovery phase. It is a supervised pause where operational control remains intact and geopolitical leverage is still being actively exercised, according to Windward Maritime AI's operational analysis. Windward: the physical reality. Over 600 vessels, including 325 tankers, are stranded in the Gulf. Only 7 ships transited on Thursday. Maximum expected throughput, even if ceasefire holds, 10 to 15 passages per day, roughly 10% of pre-war levels. Al Jazeera, the mine reality. Iran published a danger zone map over the standard shipping lane. The standard